every time I stream, you guys see this Fluval Flex 15 behind me. And I had a really great suggestion from one of my members. What about a long-term review on this tank? Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and today we're going to talk about a tank I really don't talk about that often, my Flex. Now, I've had this for a long time. This was actually the very first aquarium I bought when I got back into the hobby. And I've got a lot of opinions about it, both good and bad. So the real question is it good? I think in certain cases, it's actually a great aquarium. And in other cases, it's not. So let's dive into the pros and cons of this tank. We'll use some graphics. I've got a little B-roll we'll insert, not too much. But this isn't so much a tank tour, because like currently you can see this is basically all crypts. There's a little bit of blackbeard algae in there. It's kind of hidden. You don't see it very often, but it oddly looks cool. I won't lie. But the Fluval Flex, there's the 9, the 15, and there's what's now called the Mega Flex, which is much newer, and that's a 32.5. So it's basically 215 side by side. The gallonage is a little deceptive because part of this aquarium is built-in filtration that are some back chambers. And the way that Fluval accomplishes this is there's a divider, and then it is a 3-chamber system. So there's an inlet chamber, there's where you house your filtration, which is a sponge that has these 2 components or compartments in it where you can house media. They give you carbon and a simple ceramic media. I've never used the carbon because I always have plants. And then the 3rd chamber is for your pump. And if you use a heater, you can optionally put a heater into it. It does not come with a heater. You need to buy one, but that's not a problem. It has a light up in the lid, and that's it. It's kind of everything you need other than a heater in one go. Just add your substrate, your hardscape, your plants, and your fish. Done, right? Not bad. Now the problem comes in at some of the price points and a couple of the things that happen with this tank long term. Yeah, I've forgotten the price. This is going to be one of those, because when I bought it, it was way different than what it is now, I'm certain. Let's look up pricing on a Flex. And this is in US dollars. I'm just like checking Amazon. That's where I bought mine ages and ages ago. I've had this tank, by the way, for 5 years? Yeah, 5 years now. So if you get the 9-gallon, it's $130, and the 15-gallon is $156. You can get the white version slightly cheaper, which is interesting. The black version is apparently a little more expensive. And then the 32-gallon, I don't think they sell that on Amazon, the Mega Flex. But I think it's reasonably priced, if I remember right. We won't get into that. We're talking about this. So let's talk about the good stuff. It's a glass aquarium. It comes with its own underlayment mat for balancing. It has this cool bow to it and this honeycomb pattern kind of across the top. And I've left my tank as is. You're going to see algae, a little bit of dust on the glass, because I want you to see what it's like in the real world. Not everybody like fully polishes everything every day. Real people, we got busy lives. And then, of course, you have the lid with the light. I recently had to replace my light, and here's my old one. I actually want you to see it. It's a little grungy, mind you, but this is a light that lasted for about 4.5 years. Okay, so I replaced mine, I think 6 months ago or so. You can see it has a little, this props out the top of the lid. It goes to a little remote control by one of these little remotes here. And you can see it's got like storm settings, cloud settings, the RGB, and the whites. It's pretty simple. I control mine with a Wi-Fi timer nowadays. I used to use an actual like hard old school mechanical timer. But you know, Wi-Fi timers make everything so easy nowadays. So this is all controlled with a Wi-Fi timer. The light itself is good for like medium and low light plants. You're certainly not going to do highlight in this. At one point I had CO2 in this tank. And even then, like some of the harder demanding plants just didn't do it, even with CO2. So stick to your like medium and low light plants, especially low light. I would say low light actually is going to do the best. Your crypts, your Java ferns. Your wisterias, your water sprites. You could do things like Dwarf Sagittaria or Vallisneria. A lot of that stuff. It's all going to do really well in this tank. A lot of your easy stems, Ludwigia repens, Pogostemon Stellatus octopus, etc. All those kind of plants, dwarf aquarium lilies, they're all going to do great in this tank. What's not going to do good? You're probably not going to have great success with getting perfect color out of like pink flamingo. You're probably not going to get a full carpet of, Monte Carlo, and maybe you will. If you can, let me know in the comments, because I'm really curious, for those of you who have a flex, what you've been able to grow with just the standard light. For me, I found the most success like this. Crypts, Java Fern kind of stuff. Easy peasy. And some swords, because swords like long durations of light, not necessarily really intense light, so some of the smaller swords, because it's a smaller tank, will do great in this, like a ruffle sword and stuff like that. Melon sword, another good one. I had melon swords in this. So, alright, so far it sounds positive, right? The filtration is really simple. It's a sponge, but it's got a pump. That's where one of the first negatives comes in. The pump is one speed. Go. It is pretty powerful for how small this tank is. So it can create a lot more flow than certain fish will like. Now, I'm sure if you have some of your shorter fin bettas, like brother-in-law James's plakat, they'll do okay in this. But if you got really big, long, like double tails or the half moons, any of those like real big, beautiful finnage, this might not be the tank for them. The outlets come out in 2 nozzles, so you can split the flow a little bit, but realistically, it's still going to create a decent amount of flow inside of your tank. You can create soft spots, but where I would say this would be good for is tetras. You could do like things like pseudomagills. I actually have a dwarf species of rainbow fish and a couple like SAEs living in mine. I've done guppies in this before, and they did okay. Shorter fin, not real big long fin guppies, mind you, but shorter fin guppies. Endlers would do great. There's lots of options, especially anything that likes a little bit of flow is going to do great inside this tank. If you want something that has very gentle flow, you're going to have to do some serious work, like change out the pump or put a bunch of extra stuff. There's some modifications that are out there you can do. PecTech had a great video on this years and years ago when this tank first came out that can teach you some of those options. But base as it is, there's some restrictions because there is a good amount of flow in this tank. Now, the other, I would say, negative to this thing is over time, the silicone seal that holds the plastic divider in place will break down. Mine has multiple times. Back when my roommate used to be here, me and my roommate resealed this thing. No go. we tore this tank down and kind of restarted it at one point, and even then, like we reused a lot of stuff, but basically we could not keep the divider in place, and so there's a shot that'll be here now where you'll see the divider is like way out of its place, and it's not that bad. It's only like a ½ inch, but it's in one corner, so it's kind of like whoop, and it still functions fine. Right, it gets to the pump chamber and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really cause anything. There's nothing slipping back there, but it's just something you're probably going to run into. Another negative I would say is that the intakes are some relatively wide slots, so things like baby fish and shrimp are easily going to get into your back chambers if you don't use something to block them. And I've even tried having sponge in there and still got stuff in the back chamber. So if you're trying to keep shrimp or something like that, again, that's kind of a downside of this tank. I've seen some people do some modifications to theirs where they basically put like these little dams in front of the intake slots, and they protect to prevent shrimp and small things from getting in there. But that requires extra work, and as we know, like if we want it all in one system, we really want it to be all in one, not have to mess with it. So that's another downside. But if you're keeping something like tetras and things like that, don't worry about it. It's no problem. It's like guppies. If you're going to have babies, that's when you start running into like, oh, my baby fish are in this tiny small chamber in the back, and they're really hard to catch. Happened to this guy right here. But, it's kind of the fun. Finally, what can I say about this tank long term? I will say this. if you're not using like a pleco, and like I have algae in my tank on purpose because I have a pleco in there, I have some algae eaters, I leave stuff there for them to graze on all the time. I run my light a lot longer than I should to purposely grow a little extra algae for the algae grazers. This is all done on purpose, but what I would say is long term, this front bow actually makes cleaning the glass kind of a pain. You can't use something like one of the magnetic cleaners like you could in a standard tank. You might have a little bit of risk using a razor blade like some people will to clean glass when they're trying to get surface algae off. So you basically are going to look at something like by hand using a credit card or some kind of small semi-flexible scraper that's plastic. You don't want metal or anything like that because you're going to risk scratching the glass at that point. But other than that, like overall, for an expensive all-in-one kit, and we have to keep that in mind. This is kind of expensive, but if you think about, I'm getting a light, I have a filter, it's got a pump, it's all in one. It's not that bad as far as price is concerned. Yeah, it's not the best light. It's not the best pump because you can't control its flow in any way, shape, or form. And really, it's just a pump and a sponge filter, but I've never had to change this pump out. I've had the same pump the entire time, 5 years, runs like a champ. The foam that's in there that's supplied with it is nice quality foam. It's relatively fine, so it picks up a lot of particulates. You will need to clean it out every so often, but I've left this thing for a year without cleaning it out, and the most I did was deal with some flow issues. But it was okay because the fish in there were like, we don't need flow. So it was all right. But, if you're trying to do this immaculately, you're going to want to clean that sponge out at least once a month. And that's not that much work. I mean, it's a sponge. You take it out of your tank, put it in a bucket, walk it over to a sink, squeezy, make sure that your ceramic media is out, right? So it's safe. Keep it in the tank water somewhere, and then just plop it back in there, put it back in. You're done. It'll repopulate its media, especially if you got plants. You won't even have to worry about it. You can fit a reasonable number of fish, so it's 13 gallons up front, and then it takes about 2.5 or so in the back. It could be maybe only 12 gallons in the front as far as how the gallonage actually sits as far as space for your fish versus space for the filtration system because it's all in one. But, it's a great little tank. I've loved this thing the whole time. I think the only thing that I'll probably do with this long term is I'll just remove that divider entirely and put in like a sponge filter. I might try like the Co-op's power head that attaches to a sponge filter in this thing long term because eventually once... what's in here is going to live in here for a while. Once the rainbow that's in here, the lone rainbow that's left in this thing, passes away from old age, which it's a dwarf species that doesn't live quite as long, so it's close because it's lost a lot of its friends. But I'll probably break this tank down, make some changes to it, and just start it new. Or maybe it'll be like my significant other's tank or something. I think if you're trying to get someone into the hobby, maybe this is a first fish tank for your kid, or for a nephew, niece, whatever it may be. Maybe you're getting this for a friend who's had a lot of trouble during human malware and just needs something to perk them up, and they've shown interest in fish because you love fish. This is a great little starter tank because you've got everything kind of in one go. It looks nice. Like, I will say this about the tank, like the black silicone that they use and everything, it just presents very nicely, especially if you keep it clean. It's a great looking tank. There's a reason why a lot of people go to those big 32-gallon flexes. It's because they look good. This front bow is kind of cool. It's got a few negatives, but you know what? It's built nice. It looks good. It's distinctive. I think that's a positive. The negatives are for some of us who are more dedicated hobbyists where you're like, it's kind of expensive. I could buy a 10 or a 20-gallon for way less and then do this X, Y, and Z, and like it cost me the same, but I'd have a better filter, or I'd have a better light, or I'd have a bigger tank, or whatever it may be, right? You pay a little bit for that convenience, but overall, this is a really solid little all-in-one kit. I think it's a lot better than like the Specs or some of the Chi or some of those other previous ones. I think Fluval's really nailed kind of the formula with the Flex. I think that's why the Flex 32 exists, is because they realize like we've got it right, we just need to make it bigger. And that'll satisfy a lot of other people. The only other like extra downside is that like the pump. I really wish the pump was adjustable in some way, shape, or form. That'd be about it. and maybe like a dedicated slot to attach the heater and have the temperature control come out of the top, but you could just lift the lid and adjust it. It's pretty easy. So, that being said, I would give this thing a thumbs up, right? I think this is a good product. Clearly, I have one. I like it. I haven't torn it down and given it away because I like the thing. I think it does well when you know what it's capable of. If you go into it knowing like, oh, you know, like low and early medium light plants are going to do great in this thing, and it's got a little bit of oomph in the pump, so don't get something that has like super huge finnage and can't handle a little bit of flow, and you'll do just fine. Don't like try to pack 5-inch fish in this thing. It's a 15-gallon tank. But if you want to do like a school of tetras or danios or rasboras, or you want to do like a small kind of nano aquascape, you can do that really well in this tank. Here's a picture actually of when I first set this tank up. And you can see I tried to like do an aquascape thing. And this is before I realized like I'm not good at aquascaping. And every plant that you see in that picture died. Every single one. This is when I first got back in the hobby, right? I hadn't mastered all the skills I have nowadays, but, you know, if it wasn't for this tank and just general positive enjoyment of that and the big tank I have downstairs, I might not be where I am today. And I struggled, like, I lost some tetras and stuff in this thing, but you know what? I loved the way that this looked just sitting here in my bedroom. I could sit at my computer desk, which is I'm sitting in my computer chair now, and like you see it all the time in my live stream, and I can just take a break and look at my fish, and it just felt good. It really is a great starter tank. It was my starter tank. And if I were to start someone out with a tank and I wanted to give them an all-in-one kit in the future, I'd probably look at a Flex. Now, of course, brother-in-law James, I built my own tank, right? But that's because I wanted to specifically do something for a betta, because he wanted a betta, and I didn't want this pump. Had he been wanting something else that could handle more flow, I would have just bought a Flex. Because he even likes this tank. He likes the look of it. So, there you go. That's my opinion. I think if you're, especially for a starter, or maybe you just want a simple but slightly different looking nano tank, this is a great option. Now, there's ways you could turbocharge. You could take the lid off. You could put a better light on it. You could do all sorts of stuff. But if you buy it just as the kit, and the only thing you really need to add is a heater, as far as equipment is concerned, if you're doing tropical fish, easy peasy. It's great. It's great. It's not perfect. It's got its downsides. And over time, you're going to have some little finicky stuff with it. But you know what? Even when the light goes out, the light's only $30 to replace. You can buy the part as it is from Fluval, get it shipped to your house. It's easy to install. It's literally 2 standard Phillips screws. Really simple, just pops right in, screw it in place to lock it down. You're done. Easy. Easy, easy. It hides all your equipment, it hides your cables. It's a pretty great design. So with that being said, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have a Flex, let me know in the comments down below. What have you done with your Flex? What do you like about your Flex? What do you not like about it? Would you, knowing now your experience with it, would you still buy this tank? Or would you do something different? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear from you guys who have Flex experience. For those who don't have a Flex, has my my rambling opinion of this thing given you the idea like, hey, you know, my next nano tank, maybe I will get that Flex? Or has it told you like, I ain't getting that thing. I'm buying it. I'm going to the $1 per gallon sale and I'm hooking myself up that way. I also want to hear from you guys down in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, maybe give it a little share. All those usual things. They help out a ton when it comes to the magic YouTube algorithm and us Begatron YouTubers. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.